In this video, you're going to learn about the control center for muscular strength and force and how to develop that. Let's go. What's up, everyone? My name is Mark and welcome to TrainAllSports, and today we're going to talk about how to develop muscular strength, which is very different from muscular size. Now, many people think that having the biggest muscles in competition is the best way to develop force, but that's only partially correct. Building muscle through resistance training and high reps is only one aspect of strength, because there's another important key driver that athletes can use to boost their strength levels without gaining mass. And that key driver is the brain and central nervous system. To simply put it, you get stronger without gaining weight based on neural inputs to your muscles. The more your neural inputs increase, the more force you will be able to produce. So I think it's important here to define strength as we move along. So strength is the maximum amount of force that you can exert during an exercise or an activity. And that strength is particular to that exercise or activity. That's why you'll be able to see some people squat a lot of weight, but maybe not deadlift as much, because those two forces are different, and your body has trained its neuromuscular system differently to develop force for each of those activities. So let's start with the classical view of strength to be politically correct, or what you're gonna see pretty much everyone do in the gym. So what most people are doing is they're lifting weights with a high amount of reps. They'll be in the 8, 10, or even more. What that is doing is breaking down the muscle. Now the muscles do two things from there. They adapt and they repair. They adapt by building more muscles, and they repair by strengthening the bonds that have ripped before. And that common term of breaking down and repairing and adapting is called hypertrophy. And during hypertrophy, you will experience muscle gain and mass. But that type of resistance training is done with lighter loads, so you can get up to those 8+ reps. Now, if you increase the weight and do heavy loads where you can only do 5 or less, you are now beginning to tax your neuromuscular system much more than it was before. And this is because high loads better condition your nervous system to develop force. So by increasing the amount of neural stimulation, you will increase the amount of force that you can exert, much more than you can with low load training. So it starts with a group of muscles and a motor neuron. And when that motor neuron is attached to the group of muscles, it's called a motor unit. When that motor unit is stimulated, it will create a muscle contraction. Now, the more motor units that are stimulated, the more muscle fibers will contract and the more force you will be able to generate. So basically, the number of activated motor units will determine how much force you can generate. So the brain needs to reach a certain threshold to fire on a motor unit in order for it to produce force. And unless that threshold is met, it will never produce the force and will remain dormant. So if you think about that for a second, you have to push yourself beyond your threshold that will cause your brain to stimulate the motor units in order to cause a contraction. If you do not stimulate those motor units and you do not cause heavy loading, your body will not be good or efficient at determining which motor units to fire and which ones to not fire. So without a very strong and synchronous signal from the brain, your muscles will not activate. And the only way to activate those is to really force yourself with heavy loads and require a huge activation of multiple motor units. Now, I know that's a lot of neuromuscular motor unit things, but it's very important to understand that the heavier loads you have, the more motor neurons you can stimulate. And that brings me to how you can train yourself to recruit more of these muscles so you can move these heavy objects. First thing you need to do is to understand what I mentioned in the beginning, is that each exercise or activity requires a different amount of motor units and stimulation. This is when timing and sequencing comes into play, and if you want more on that, I did a video about grip strength that goes a little bit into timing and sequencing. But that being said, if you do not have the right form or the right technique for the exercise that you are doing, you will be firing the wrong motor neurons and you will not be able to produce as much force efficiently as you would like to. So if your form is really bad with squat, you are not going to be able to squat a lot of weight. Now that makes a lot of sense, right? But if you start adding weight and heavier loads and your form is bad, you will be firing the wrong muscles at the wrong time and you will never be able to put up weight. So it's very important that you nail down your technique before you start loading heavier and heavier weights to get the strength down. The best way I recommend to do that is to do really light loads and focus on being smooth and efficient. Another thing you can do is work on concentric, eccentric, and isometric exercises. I also went in that in another video if you're interested in that too. The second thing you're going to do is practice heavy loads as much as you can. If you really want to gain strength, you're going to have to lift heavy. What do you think Olympic weightlifters do to make it to the Olympics? Do you think they don't lift heavy or they're interested in building a lot of muscle mass? No, of course not. They have weight classes. So what they're going to do is they're going to lift heavy all the time. So if that's where you want to be and you're very satisfied with how you look and you're very satisfied with your well-being and you just want to be super strong, you are going to need to lift heavy weights constantly. You're going to need to push your body and brain past the threshold where you're going to activate a ton of motor units and you're going to drive a lot of muscle fibers and you're going to lift a lot of weight. This is going to be the future of strength training. You're going to see devices on people and they're going to measure their neural output. And this is going to determine how much force they can produce. And those who can produce a lot of force, you're going to recognize that these people are able to activate and push past a threshold much more neurons. But remember this one important thing. When you are lifting heavy weights, you are changing and adapting your brain and your central nervous system, which is imperative for your body to function properly. So strength training with heavy loads is going to cause a total adaptation of your mind and body. So overall well-being and taking care of yourself with the proper nutrients is going to be extremely important the more you experience heavier and heavier loads. So don't let up on the nutrition and supplements that'll help you be able to perform better in the gym.